So the number 5 starter question for the Cardinals, let's just say it might still be pending after what happened to Andre Palante on Tuesday night. Coming up on B-Shafe Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Shafe Daily. Brenden Schaeffer. It is Tuesday, June 5th, 2024. The Cardinals lose another one down in Houston. And this one, I don't know that it was more frustrating than the bullpen blowing it on Monday night the way that they did. But to see number 5 starter Andre Palante struggle the way that he did tonight, well, that doesn't make anybody feel too good about what's to come for this Cardinals team, as pretty definitively they don't have the number 5 starter spot solved. You know, that was a question, and then Palante had the really nice outing against Cincinnati. Well, his next turn through was tonight, and it did not go nearly as well against a lineup that I think has a lot more high-caliber hitters than the Reds do. Even as the Astros have struggled so far this year, they still do have some talented hitters in that lineup, and they got to Andre Palante tonight, but it's in part Andre Palante doing it to himself, as in only 3 innings of work, Palante walked 3, which is pretty standard for the way that he's pitched, and you get away with it when you get double play balls to erase those free passes, but that didn't really happen tonight for Andre Palante, and he also hit a batter to kick things off in the first inning. Base hit to lead off the game on the first pitch, or not the game, but the game for the home half with the Houston Astros. The Cardinals actually had a lead before the Astros ever batted in the game, thanks to Alec Burleson hitting another home run. Got things going in the top of the first inning for the Cardinals. His 8th long bomb of the season coming off of Astros starter Spencer Spaghetti. But in the bottom half of the inning, Andre Palante did not set the tone. Base hit batter, and then a wild pitch that was not able to be hauled in by Ivan Herrera behind the plate, which put it at runners in second and third with nobody out, which is basically 2 automatic runs against Andre Palante, because even when he gets the outs, the infield's not going to be in the first inning, which I agree with. I don't think you try to do anything too crazy with Palante on the mound and already not pitching well. You keep the infielders back, you take the outs, you trade them for runs, and ultimately you're down 2-1 after the Astros hit a couple of ground balls and score both those runners from second and third. So you can make the case that the wild pitch, I mean, it was responsible for scoring both runs, possibly. They probably still get one, and then Palante did have a walk that extended the inning. There was a pickoff that was successful, but the Cardinals were not able to execute the rundown, as Nolan Gorman is charged with an error in that sequence. So just some very, very sloppy baseball by the Cardinals to begin this game tonight, and it really didn't get a whole lot better from there. We will talk tonight on B-Shafe Daily about the sloppiness, about the fundamentals, which I do believe are officially a concern right now for this Cardinals team. It's been going for too many games in a row. The errors are becoming a trend, and even plays that aren't errors you can point to and say that is not good fundamental baseball being played by the St. Louis Cardinals, and I think it came back to bite him in tonight's game. Cardinals lose 8-5. We'll talk about the 5th starter situation after Palante's tough outing, giving up 6 earned runs over just 3 innings of work. And for as much as the Cardinals did have a fine all-around offensive night, when you put up 5 runs, that's above the threshold that I have typically kept, saying, hey, the Cardinals, it's incumbent upon them to score at least 4 runs. You'd like to get a 5th one, but if you do that, more often than not, you're going to put yourself in a really good position to win with the way that the team has built this pitching staff this year. 5 runs is a good total. It doesn't end up being enough, and I think we can still find ways to harp on this Cardinal offense. And if you guys in particular are still struggling right now, we'll talk Nolan Arenado, the night that he had. Brendan Donovan, with maybe the worst at-bat that I've seen in Major League Baseball this season, came at a really inopportune time for the Cardinals. I'm not exactly sure what went down, but we'll try to break it down and see if we can make sense of it. But then on the other side of things, you've got some guys that are playing really, really well offensively. Alec Burleson, we got to give him his flowers. Nolan Gorman going deep again in this game. Got to give him flowers for what he's doing offensively. But defensively, he was problematic for a second straight game. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. And talk about, in terms of positive news, the big night for Masyn Winn, able to show out in his sort of hometown area. He's from the Houston area originally, and he hit one into the Crawford boxes tonight. Batting in the 8th hole, it hasn't mattered where they've put Masyn Winn in the lineup. He has continued to produce for the Cardinals. So a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, and overall a concerning trend for the Cardinals as they lose another one to the Houston Astros 8-5 on Tuesday night. Appreciate you guys for joining me for this edition of the show. Make sure if you like Cardinals content, videos, and podcasts, click subscribe on the channel. Brenden Schaeffer, St. Louis Cardinals writer. We do that all season long, covering every angle of all the Cardinal games. And then into the offseason, we'll get to talk about hot stove, free agency, trade rumors, etc. So this is really the place to be all year round. Hit the subscribe button and leave a comment below with your current thoughts on where the Cardinals are. And by the way, just a quick mention, if you want to join the channel membership, there is a link in the description of this video for you to be able to do that. Just $5 a month gets you some perks and helps me out as you support the channel if you enjoy the content that we put out. All right, let's go ahead, though, and talk some Cardinals baseball here, as this was a tough watch tonight for Andre Pallante. After what he did against the Reds, you thought maybe he could be the answer for the number 5 starter spot for the St. Louis Cardinals for the time being. And I think he's going to get another start after what we saw tonight, because I don't necessarily think you take one bad one and say, yeah, off with your head, you're done. But this was not conducive to winning. 6 runs allowed in 3 innings, and the home run allowed to Yainer Diaz, his second in consecutive games. Just a flick of the wrist out toward the opposite field for Diaz, as Palante had his motion does do this to right-handers, and that's why I think partially he's struggled against right-handed batters. Throughout his career, he's always had reverse splits. He does sort of come with a crossfire angle, and that causes the ball to run in on the hands of left-handers, but it has the opposite effect on righties, to where Diaz on the home run that ended up being a 3-run bomb and the real dagger in the game came early against the Cardinals. He just had to kind of stick the bat head out there and float it to the opposite field, and that was enough to win the game. The Astros at that point led 6-1. The Cardinals only climbed up to 5 total runs. It just was a rough one for Andre Palante, who knew as much after the game. We'll hear from him, courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest, the Cardinals starter, on what went wrong in his outing against the Astros this evening. Audio again, courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest.
Yeah, I just didn't execute my pitches as well as I need to get right-handed hitters out. Walked too many guys, finding counts, exactly what you said.
And early on, did it not feel right? Because early on, you walked the guy, hit the guy. Did you know it wasn't like the first start?
It didn't feel terrible, but this is the stuff that I've been working on over the last month or so. And this was a lineup full of guys that I'm, trying to implement that on. I'm still getting used to it, and just gotta be better.
So what Palante's talking about there is the Astros lineup that contains a ton of right-handed batters, because we know from what he told the media after the start against the Reds that was really primarily what he worked on when he was down in AAA. Remember, Ollie Marmol said, do you want to start? Do you want to be a reliever down there? What's going to help you the most? He said, I really do view myself as a starter. And so the Cardinals said, that's fine. You're not going to be on this roster, but go down to AAA, do what you think you need to do to be able to get back here in some capacity and improve your standing, your stature with the team. And he did that. He did that by working on a 2-seam fastball in particular that he could run in on the hands of righties, but the crossfire delivery seemed to just be a hallmark of his game tonight, and there was no running anything in on the hands of righties with the delivery that he had. I don't know if it's mechanically something that you want to see happen differently to avoid that, or if it's just going to be his inherent style, but it felt like just a little bit off, I thought, in the delivery. I don't know if that's something that's easily fixable from start to start, but the downstream impact of that was that anytime you're against a right-handed batter, instead of being able to challenge those guys inside, the pitches are floating out over the plate, and he tried to, I think, pitch away from some righties as a result of that, but that just puts, in terms of, we talk about some guys are deceptive with their delivery, and it's kind of hard to see it coming out and to get a good look at it, good read on a pitch and the movement and the spin. I would venture to guess that for Andre Palante and the batters that were in the box against him from the right side tonight, it was the mortal opposite of that, where they said, the thing looks like a beach ball. When he's throwing with that crossfire, he's opened up, and the ball just kind of floats out, and you just have to stick the bat head out, and you can take it the opposite way, hit it where it's pitched. That happened a number of times to Palante tonight. It happened on the home run by Diaz. It happened on an RBI double that happened against him. Can't remember who hit it, but it was just right-handed batters flicking the wrist and sending it out to right field for damaging swings, because that's a tough thing to defend. If you're a right fielder, you got to be able to cover those straight up angles, and you're not necessarily thinking about guarding the line for those opposite field hits. And that just caused Palante to really struggle tonight. And he said the frustration there is that these are the exact things he's been trying to implement, and this was the perfect type of lineup to test that out against when you have some really high caliber righties in there. And ultimately, it was a failed venture tonight for Andre Pallante. 3 innings, 6 hits allowed, 6 runs, all of them earned, 3 walks, a hit batter, and a home run. His ERA balloons back up to 6.16 for the season. I believe Jeremy Pena, by the way, was the RBI double that happened right before the Yainer Diaz homer, and just kind of flicked it out to right field into the corner. Diaz hits a homer the opposite way, and just like that, the Cardinals are in dire straits, knowing that the bullpen was pretty heavily used last night in the loss on Monday, and you did swap out Ryan Ludis for Chris Roycroft, so you knew that he would be somebody that could be available to Ollie Marmol tonight as a fresh arm. But other than that, you just didn't have a ton of length from your bullpen, and you're going to have to use 4 or 5 guys again, which is a concern. Credit to Kyle Leahy, who did come in tonight and throw 2 2/3 innings, gave up a run, but he got the Cardinals into the 6th, and Liberatore recording the final out of that inning to sort of stabilize things. If he is not competitive in those 2 2/3 innings, the Cardinals really don't have a shot tonight. They ultimately do lose the game, but the offense was able to do enough to keep him within striking distance, and there will be some positives to take away from that. But let's kind of think about this 5th starter spot a little bit more. What do the Cardinals need to do here? I think in the short term, it's going to be Andre Palante getting another start. I don't know that that's going to excite too many people after watching the way that he pitched tonight. Again, it's the free passes combined with the bad fundamentals. The wild pitch doesn't help you. Hitting the batter doesn't help you. And then you're going to walk 3 as well in 3 innings. Palante even said he's always going to be a guy that takes accountability. He knows he wasn't good enough, but that's some solace for a Cardinals team that really could have used a win tonight in what I would have considered on paper to be their best chance in terms of head-to-head pitching matchups. Last night, I understand Gibson pitched better than Justin Verlander did, but generally you're going to say that Verlander is going to be, even at this age, I think, the beneficiary of the pitching matchup against almost anybody out there. And then in this one, I thought Pallante over Spencer Spaghetti was, I thought that Pallante was the better pitcher. Spaghetti came in with a 5.9 ERA, and after the game, he's at 5.79. He only went 3 innings, gave up 1 run. He walked 3 as well, gave up the homer to Burleson, but was able to, sort of in a bullpen game sort of fashion, keep the Astros in it, as the Cardinals were sort of able to work up the pitch count against Spaghetti. 64, though, in three innings. Like, he could have gone deeper if Joe Espada wanted him to, but I think it was probably the right decision. I mean, it's hard to say because the next 3 relievers that came in did ultimately give up runs, but things were not going to go off the rails in this spot, I think, with a starter that is Houston's number 5. So they pulled him early. They went with the quick hook. And look, Ollie Marmol pulled Andre Pallante after 3. I saw comments, I don't think most people think this, but that they didn't pull him soon enough because you could tell that he was struggling. Yeah, you could tell that he was struggling, but you just didn't really have another choice. You can't pull a starter in the 3rd inning the night after you put a bullpen on fumes the way that they did yesterday. Like, it just was, you had to try to get Pallante through. I mean, obviously 3 is all he was able to muster on the 75 pitches. But in theory, you're trying to get him through 4, and really you're hoping to get him through 5. It ultimately didn't happen, of course, but I don't think there's any problem with allowing Pallante to keep pitching in the 3rd. I mean, if this is the standard that we're going to set for what a manager of the St. Louis Cardinals needs to be ready to do, the problem lies with the roster itself and not the decision to leave a guy in to pitch the remainder of the 3rd. I mean, what are we doing here if that's the way we're going to grade this thing out? And again, you had Leahy, who's capable of giving you multiple innings, and he recorded 8 outs tonight, and that was really, really key for this Cardinal team because I don't even think the offense musters the ability to kind of keep things close and keep things interesting for a little while. You end up losing the game by 3 runs, but that was only because of Houston tacking on another run in the 7th inning. Otherwise, you're talking about a 2-run game and the Cardinals having a legitimate chance at one point in time to potentially rally and win this game, thanks to, really, again, it's the long ball that they were able to score their runs off of tonight. Just 2 for 11 with runners in scoring position. The clutch timely hit continues to be a problem for this team. 11 hits, 5 walks, so you've got 16 base runners to play with, and you end up leaving 11 on base. That's too many. That's not going to get the job done against an Astros team that does have a good lineup. And I said at the onset of this series that it was going to be a slugfest. To win some of these games, you're going to have to outslug the Astros because they're kind of struggling on the pitching side. You know that the Cardinals are dealing with a rotating cast in that number 5 spot in the rotation. It's just the bullpen is starting to kind of show some cracks, obviously, and that was something that we obviously saw on Monday. But this was going to have to be a series where the Cardinals would need to score, and as much as it's nice to see them score 5, I think this series is a little bit more demanding of this lineup to be, especially when you get 11 hits and 5 walks and you have the opportunity to match the 7 or 8 kind of run output from the Astros. That's where it's disappointing. It's not like they didn't get the guys in position to make it happen. They just didn't come through enough in those clutch situations. Homer from Burleson, homer from Gorman, homer from Mason Wynn. That accounts for 4 of your 5 RBIs. Michael Ciani drove one in despite not getting a hit in the game. But the Cardinals needed to have come up with some more clutch hits in this one, and I don't think there was a moment that was as damning on the St. Louis Cardinals offensively as maybe all season as what we saw from Brendan Donovan to end the 7th inning. The lineup changes around. I mentioned that Mason Wynn's been hitting no matter where you put him, and he's in the 8-hole tonight. He might need to be your leadoff hitter just to be able to set a better tone at the top compared to what we saw from Brendan Donovan tonight. And I know that Ollie Marmol is not going to overreact to one game, but if you look at the season-long numbers, Mason Wynn is just objectively, he's just been way better. Donovan, I still do believe, can get there, but right now the numbers are what they are. He's hitting .236 with a .686 OPS, and tonight he went 0 for 5. He had a couple of strikeouts. Was not the only Cardinal to go 0 for 5, as we'll talk a little bit about Nolan Arenado as well. The mark of the beast. He's .666 on the OPS right now. But it's .686 for Donovan. It's .805 for Mason Wynn. And if you bring up Mason Wynn to the top of that lineup, you go right, left, right. And then you can really go left because Gorman is now hitting enough to feel very good about him batting cleanup. And so if you wanted to go that way, you could. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think Ollie Marmol's going to overreact to what he saw from Brendan Donovan, but some of his at-bats don't look as comfortable. Just some of the swing decisions that we're seeing. He's not effectively working counts maybe the way that we normally are used to from him, but the strikeout that happened in the 7th inning to end a bases-loaded threat for the Cardinals, like you got the hit from Mason Wynn. Mason Wynn steals second. They walk Dylan Carlson. Ivan Herrera was already on base after he doubled to left field. This is a bases-loaded opportunity for the Cardinals to, the go-ahead run is on first base. They're down 7-5 in this moment. A base hit ties it, and anything into the gap, the Cardinals are leading this game after trailing 6-1. Brendan Donovan just stared at 2 fastballs right down the pipe. Strike 2, strike 3, was leaning like he was looking for something different. You cannot be up there guessing in that spot. And if it happens to you on strike 2, it absolutely cannot happen to you on strike 3. Just kept the bat on his shoulders on 2 very hittable pitches. It's upper 90s velocity. That's what you get in modern MLB coming out of the bullpen. But these were 2 hittable pitches that if Brendan Donovan is not caught guessing, looking off speed, whatever it was, he's going to be able to turn one of those pitches around or at least have a pretty good chance to do so because it's not that they were extremely well located. They were just dead center of the plate. Take a look and take a hack and maybe boost your Cardinal team up to a win in this game. Brendan Donovan just stared him down for the final out of the inning with the bases loaded. What do you say? I just have absolutely no idea, what was the thought process there. Had to have been guessing. It's the only way to explain it, but it's not a satisfactory explanation. That was an extremely key spot in the game for the Cardinals, and Donovan just froze up. I don't think that's something you're going to see from him all the time, but it happened, so we talk about it. It was brutal for it to happen in that moment the way that it did, and that was the moment you're like, all right, this game's probably cooked, and then the Astros score 1 in the bottom of the inning to extend it back out to a 3-run lead right after the Cardinals had trimmed it to just 2 runs there earlier in the 7th. Just brutal. Just a really, really tough spot for that. And the 0 for 5 happens to Donovan with a couple of Ks. Only 7 Ks on the night for the Cardinals. Goldie had a couple. Carpenter, Herrera, and Ciani all with 1 apiece. Arenado didn't have any strikeouts, but he also didn't have any hits. And every time you turn around, he was popping one up to the infield or shallow right center, and just not competitive swings by Nolan Arenado. Just getting under the ball, and it's me on MLB The Show when I play online. It's just at-bats that are not high quality right now from Arenado, who, as I mentioned, down to 666 on the OPS. And if you take away, which you can't do because all of them count, even the good ones, even the bad ones, like you have to look at the whole picture. But if you take away the home run at Great American Ballpark, which we call Great American Small Park, and is a very home run oriented place, it's been a bit of a struggle for him recently. He had the good swing, I believe, in the opener in Philly. So he's up to 5 homers on the season. But if you look last 15 games for Arenado, suddenly it's actually lower OPS than his season-long numbers. He's got a 270 on base and a 350 slug over his past 15 games. That's a 620 OPS. He's got a 660-something OPS for the season. And over the last 7 games, hitting 172, OPS down around 600. It's just been a grind for Arenado, and I'm seeing Cardinals fans on social media kind of turn on him a little bit. Let me know what you think about Arenado at this point, Cards fans. Comment below with your thoughts. But I saw some folks on social media, on Twitter, talking and basically saying, like, I don't like this guy right now as a player for the team, which is just a really weird spot to feel like the fan base is in with Arenado, because this was the guy that people were going nuts when they traded for him, and for good reason. I mean, this is a generational type of player and has been really good for the Cardinals up until this year. And you could say last year really maybe started to decline a little bit. But what we're seeing right now from Arenado, you cannot bat this guy in the top 5 in the order. I'm on Ollie Marmol's side on a lot of the complaints that fans will have, because I think there's usually a logical explanation for the things that are done. And if there's not one, it's oftentimes you could say, well, look at the roster, look at the options that were available for A, B, C, or D, whatever we might be talking about. And typically I would say, yeah, whatever he went with, if it's not my objective bona fide first choice, it's at least defensible in the decision. At this point, I don't know that Arenado in the top 5 in the order is even defensible anymore, because he's just struggled so much. And look, you might say, well, they like having Mason Wynn or Donovan, whichever one's not leading off. You like that guy to be closer to the bottom of the lineup so that you can kind of have another on-base threat that can be down low, so when they turn things over, they're only leadoff once in the game. And then after that, it's almost like a double leadoff effect. Or, Siani's going to bat last because he's the worst hitter in the daily lineup. He's got a 517 OPS. Nobody else is that low. Carpenter's at 535, but he's also not really a daily player. Did start today. But Arenado batting, look, he's batting 5th. I would put Herrera above him. I would certainly put Mason Wynn above him. And even if you say, well, the 5 spot, 6 spot's not a power spot, what's the thought process there? Don't care. I think you just need to stack the better ABs at the top of your lineup. And if Arenado's batting 7th, he's batting 7th. And if that's, some people maybe will say that's an overreaction. He's still Arenado. He's been kind of a glorified singles hitter in a lot of ways this year. And today it was just getting under the ball and popping it up. I don't remember exactly how many he had. I think he had at least one ground out, but there had to be 3 or 4 pop-ups that were just kind of feeble pop-ups, not very Arenado-esque. So if that's where he's at right now, I think there are, and again, it worked out for the Cardinals with Mason Wynn batting 8th because he did have a 2-run homer. A lot of the Cardinals' home runs end up being solo shots. And so with the nice night that Herrera had, he went 2 for 4 with a couple of runs scored and also reached base via walk. Mason was 3 for 3 and reached via walk. He had an unbelievable game. Stole a base too. So just continuing to do some great things and gets the OPS up above 800 once again. But I'm just to the point where I think you can't necessarily lose from making these lineup shifts and saying, let's go ahead and put the best hitters at the top, because they're ultimately going to get that extra at-bat as a result of it. You had Matt Carpenter batting 6th tonight, and he got 5 at-bats, whereas Mason Wynn only ended up with 4 plate appearances, and they didn't get him out all night. So I'm to the point where Mason, he can't bat 8th. He's got to be in the top 6 in the lineup, because there isn't any doubt that he's one of your 6 best hitters, and frankly, he's one of your 2 best hitters alongside what Nolan Gorman is doing, and I would say Alec Burleson. That trio has really been making it happen lately for the Cardinals. Goldie goes 1 for 4. He also reached via walk tonight, so like you're still seeing occasional signs of life from him, but it's just too few and far between. I don't know if you would consider moving Goldie back down in the lineup. Maybe you want to break up Arenado and Goldie a little bit further in the lineup because those two have sort of been, chasms within your team. 659 and 666 on the OPS for those two players is not top half of the lineup caliber, and it's June. So I don't typically talk too much about lineup stuff because I think it can be overblown. But when you've got a guy like Mason Wynn doing what he's doing toward the bottom, bat him in the top 6 at a minimum. Whatever that ends up looking like. If you want Burley in the 2-hole because you want him batting in the first inning to set a tone, I don't mind it. I think you can make a case that Wynn leading off instead of Donovan right now would make a lot of sense. I think it is going to be matchup oriented. We've seen, various versions of it. But right now I'm taking Mason Wynn, and if he's not my leadoff batter for whatever matchup reason, he's going to still be in the top 6. I'm making sure he gets that 5th at bat, or 5th plate appearance rather, in a game like tonight, instead of having it go to Matt Carpenter or go to Nolan Arenado. Like, I just don't think it's justifiable anymore to have Arenado batting ahead of Mason Wynn in the order. You can do your platoons, you can do your right, left, right, whatever you want to do. I think I got to move Mason Wynn up. And Ivan Herrera kind of strikes me as a very similar hitter in a lot of ways to Mason, just in terms of production. He's hitting 275 with a 719 OPS, so Mason's better on both counts. But Herrera goes up there and takes a professional at bat more times than not. And he had a really nice game tonight, reaching base 3 times, as I mentioned. So those two guys probably get bumped up for me. Arenado down to about 7th. And as much as, there are going to be days where Matt Carpenter is going to start as a DH, I don't think you want to bat him in anything other than maybe the bottom 3rd as well. So I don't know if that ends up looking like Arenado 7, Carpenter 8, Ciani 9, or Carlson 9, whoever ends up in that spot. And Donovan can kind of slide in there as well. If you want to bat Donovan lower as sort of the double leadoff man, could live with that. But if he starts heating up too, I just don't want to see your better hitters batting that low in the order. Cardinal fans, let me know what you think about this. I think a lot of y'all might be on board with what I'm saying here, because typically you're the ones having to kind of say to me, hey, look, the lineup needs to change. Ollie Marmol needs to shift it up, shake it up, and get some of the better performing players up top. And I have historically not been too keen on worrying about it, because I do think it can be an overblown conversation. And I know when we talk daily about this team, we got to have something to talk about. But I am to the point where with Mason Wynn, it's like you've got 2 guys in your lineup right now with an 800 OPS. One of them's Nolan Gorman, who's just gone in fuego recently, up to now 14 homers on the year. He's gone from barely pacing to hit 28 to 30 bombs to now he could end up with a legitimate shot at 40 if he continues the way that he's going right now. But he's got an 828 OPS, which is high on the team outside of what Wilson Contreras was doing, and hopefully will do again when he gets back from the broken arm. But Mason Wynn's the only other guy with an OPS above 800. Burley's at 756. You need Mason Wynn to be taking more at bats than some of these other guys. It's just there's no reason to continue to play this status quo when, the Cardinals are at risk of kind of slipping back a little bit. People didn't like it when I phrased it that way after the second loss against Philly over the weekend. But in the question of the video was, is this another Cardinals slide, or are the Phillies just that good? And look, the Phillies are just that good, but also right now the Astros are not that good. They do have a good offense, but the Cardinals should be able to do enough against this team in a game like tonight against Spencer Spaghetti. You got to probably score more runs. And look, I think Joe Espada recognized that wasn't a conducive matchup to Houston having success, and so they pull him after 3 innings as well, with the damage being minimized. But even within those first 3 innings, the Cardinals left a lot of meat on the bone against Spaghetti. 3 hits allowed, 3 walks allowed, but the Cardinals only came up with 1 run, and ended up being the homer by Burleson. So that's a spot where I think you can take a holistic approach and say things the offense needed to have done better. They're still not clutch hitting consistently enough. You like seeing the long ball power, but you got to have some runners in scoring position success to go along with that if you're going to beat an Astros team that's going to be able to pummel you at times. And they've done it in this series, 7 runs and then 8 runs tonight. But I think almost as much of a concern as the lack of clutch hitting and consistent timely hitting from the Cardinals. And even though they scored 5 runs, I still am harping on it because I think it is an example of, look, if Brenden Donovan just gets the bat off his shoulder, I don't know what he was doing. Love Brenden Donovan. I think he's a really good baseball player, plays the game the right way. But in that spot, just 2 mistakes in a row. If you're going to keep the bat on your shoulders looking at 1 pitch because you're going to take a guess in a 1-strike count, I can live with it. I cannot live with it in a 2-strike count. It just can't happen. And he got fooled by fastballs. It's not like there was anything tricky about it. He got fooled by fastballs down the pipe, and that's fundamentals too. Not only are the errors that we're talking about and the misplays and for Palante, I think it's fundamentally a problem to walk as many guys as he does. I've said he can get away with it when the double plays are flowing, but tonight was a night where some of those grounders to the right side, Gorman just did not have a good game defensively, and there were a couple of plays where I thought maybe he could have gotten to it, but he was not positioned where it was conducive to where the grounder was hit, and that's not the end of the world. I'm not going to pin that too much on the defender, but it's just this was not the night to get the double plays for Palante, and when that happens, when he doesn't get double plays, he ends up giving up bombs because the ground balls still happen. They just turn into base hits instead of double plays, and now the sacks are juiced, and he's trying to be a little too fine, and he gives up a home run. Not juiced as in loaded, but they had a couple of men on base with the Yainer Diaz homer. And those are the ways that Andre Palante starts can go south on him. He walks guys, he hits guys, wild pitches, gets the grounders that allow him to record outs, but at that point you're conceding runs by doing it later in the first inning, and then the third inning happened when he gives up the homer. Just a really tough outing, but fundamentals beyond what's going on with that number 5 starter. And look, I do think you have to have a plan if you're John Mozeliak to be addressing this situation, if you're genuine about the Cardinals having a look and having a chance to maybe do something here. I saw it said that maybe it was Passan that reported it, that the Chicago White Sox are willing to listen to offers and are willing to trade Garrett Crochet and Luis Robert. Michael Kopech is another guy that they have that's a reliever. Cardinals, just go get all 3 of them because Robert would solve your outfield issues, not only with production, but I think he could play decent enough defense, whether he's a center fielder for this Cardinal team or you'd rather see him in a corner. Regardless, the bat is capable. He's got like a 719 OPS or something right now, but he's certainly a better hitter than that. Crochet has been a really good pitcher for the White Sox, and then maybe Kopech out of relief can resolve the fact that the Cardinals are sort of starved for, as we mentioned a lot on last night's episode. And I'll have something posting to the YouTube channel at noon. I've already scheduled it for noon on Wednesday, so check that out. More conversation about the bullpen and whether the Cardinals need to be active right now in considering making a trade. But I would look at the White Sox and say, you guys are out of it. What do you want? And look, it may end up being like a Tink Henson. You'd have to reckon with whether or not you're willing to consider that if you're the Cardinals. And that's, of course, even assuming the White Sox would have interest in Tink Henson specifically, which we may not know. We might say, oh, he's a really good prospect. He's one of the Cardinals' best ones. But what does the Chicago organization need? What do they view Tink Henson as? Future starter, future reliever, etc. Those are the things that are baked in. You cannot just go off of prospect rankings with these trade ideas. However, White Sox have a lot of pieces that would be suitable to the Cardinals. I just don't know if the Cardinals even have enough prospects in the organization to pull off a blockbuster like that. You can say, well, Dylan Carlson, no, he doesn't have trade value, just like he doesn't have any. You can say, well, you could trade some of the veterans that are underperforming, guys like Goldie and Arenado. That's not how these things work. You're not trading those guys to rebuilding teams on Goldie expiring contract, not playing well. Arenado, crap load of money still owed, not playing well. It maybe ends up being an albatross contract after all, which we did not really think was going to be the case. But the way Arenado is playing right now, body language isn't great, just kind of trotting out to first base, which he does. He doesn't hustle on pop-ups or infield groundouts, but neither did Yadier Molina, and you all loved him. So it is what it is, man. But, I think Arenado, if he raced Yadi today, and Yadi's been, living it up, the retired life for the last 2 years, I think Yadi would beat Arenado in a race today. So maybe there's not a lot of reason to hustle. He's just that slow. But, it's just been a rough kind of vibes year for Arenado, and there have been moments and fits and starts. He's got 5 homers, but that's still far below what the expectations are for him. And as we talked about recently as well, last in defensive runs saved among MLB third basemen, dead last, the worst in baseball at that position, where he has owned that position for a full decade prior to not winning the Gold Glove for the first time in 2023. So I don't know what's going on with Arenado, but the Cardinals would do well to get him back on track, and nobody's trying to do it as much as Arenado wants it to happen, because he doesn't like being in this spot and playing poorly and not helping the team win and not achieving his personal success. But that's where it is right now, and so he's got to try to find a way out of it. And the Cardinals have to try to find a way out of what's going on with their general malaise fundamentally. Like I said, it's officially a concern right now. Like, it's not to say that this group of players cannot come out of it and be able to play again that level of clean baseball, but they're not doing it right now, period. And it's an issue because it continues to cost them day after day. There's no reason to sugarcoat it and to say, well, this is a good fundamental team we expect to be. I'm not buying that anymore because how many games in a row have they made an error, right? How many times have they made multiple errors? How many times has it not been an error, but it's been a misplay that has cost them in the run scoring column? Came into today, 6th most errors per game in MLB and added 2 more errors to that list, both of them assigned to Nolan Gorman. He had a second play, basically the exact same as the one from yesterday. Well, not the exact same because that one ricocheted off of Kittredge, but it was a play ranging to his right, trying to charge it and charge the hop and time it out and just boots it completely. And he showed some frustration after doing it because he knows he did the same damn thing yesterday. But 6th in MLB in most errors per game, not in least errors per game. They're now in the bottom in terms of where you want to be, and add 2 more errors to that after the 6th most coming into today, I believe was the stat. So it's an issue. They're just not good enough in the other areas to shrink the margin for error in those areas any further, right? Errors hurt a starting rotation that's basically average at best. It hurts a bullpen that's had some really bright moments, but has been stretched thin recently. And we're not so sure about the bottom rung of guys as far as whether they can be trusted in leverage or not. And they're having to be used in those spots because the little things are happening to extend the ask of some of the other relievers like Kittredge and like JoJo yesterday. It's just not a good formula. And it also, these errors make an offense that's solid but not performing at an elite level right now, especially with RISP, to have to do even more to overcome the freebies that they're giving up on the defensive side. It's just not Cardinals baseball, and that's going to be something that I think they have to address ASAP and bring it to a reckoning. Like, it's not just something that I think is just going to go away if you don't treat it like something that is a significant problem. If you pretend like it's not happening, I don't know that it's going to be something that they can fix as a team. But I'm sure that internally those team meetings are ideally, hopefully happening to say, guys, this is not the way that we play. We got to be cleaner. And like on that play, Gorman, I don't think that charge play is one that's working for him right now. He's probably got to put in some extra field work to be able to get it where he wants it to be. Those are the little things that I think throughout the summer the Cardinals are going to have to end up doing. And right now it's just not working for them in a variety of ways. Granted, they could do the same thing that they did in Game 3 against Philly. Tomorrow afternoon against Houston, they can claim Game 3, they can avoid the sweep, and it can end up being a 2-4 road trip, which nobody wants. But ultimately, I think it's acceptable if you then, first of all, you got to do it. Tomorrow they got to win the game in order to avoid being swept. And then if you're able to successfully do it, you can feel a little bit better saying, all right, come home. You're facing the Rockies for 4. You're facing the Pirates for 3. A chance to really be able to tack on. And look, if you can't do it against those teams, then I don't really know that we're talking about a playoff caliber Cardinal team this year. But Miles Michaelis against Ronel Blanco coming up on Wednesday afternoon. That's certainly a pitching matchup that favors Houston pretty significantly. But let me know, Cardinals fans. Comment below. Make sure you hit like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you like Cardinals content on the regular that we bring here. A lot of questions to be able to kind of dive into. What's your biggest concern right now? Is it the lack of fundamentals? Is it the offense still not coming up with enough clutch hits? Is it Arenado in general? Like you talk about a specific player struggling. Cardinals need Arenado to be that cleanup caliber guy, but if he's not going to be it right now, I don't think it's crazy to move him down in the order. And you may make the consideration with Goldie as well. But without Wilson Contreras in there, it's kind of hard to think, well, how many guys are really worthy of batting above those two, even as they're struggling? Maybe Herrera and Mason Wynn are the answers to that because they both have better numbers. So maybe that's your biggest concern. Maybe it's still the bullpen issues from yesterday. You'll like tomorrow's episode at noon. That'll drop on the YouTube channel. Has already been recorded, and we'll release it. We just want to stagger it out a little bit because we are doing B Shape Daily with this episode that I'll release right after I wrap up recording it. Or is it the 5th starter that you're worried about? Because I think that's going to be a situation that Pallante is not able to stabilize, which maybe this was just a bad one, and most of the time he'll go give you that 5 innings and 3 runs allowed. But he certainly didn't do it tonight, and if he had been just a little bit sharper, Cardinals very well could have won this game. Brenden Donovan doesn't keep the bat on his shoulders. Cardinals very well could have won this game. But I just think it's very interesting that we're going to see a little more Palante, and then how long are you going to let him go versus is Steven Matz going to be coming back? He might be starting to rehab within the next week or two, and that could change the calculus. But, The Cardinals have basically, the way that they set this up, and I continue to harp on it, John Mozeliak was asked in spring about the rotation depth, and he basically preferred to talk about the 5 that they had in their rotation penciled in and how they were going to rely on those guys to take the ball, to go the distance, 30-plus starts throughout the year for each of them. He said, we're hopeful that our 5 can go. That was the quote from spring training when asked about the depth, and it's just not feasible for any team, really, but especially for a Cardinal team that knew it was carrying Steven Matz among those 5. He's going to miss some time to injury. It just is the nature of Steven Matz at this point. And so now you're left with wondering about the pitching depth behind it. And Mo did say in spring, well, we've got 8 or 9 guys that we know can step in. Like laundry list of names, but some of them, like Drew Rom, have been injured. Others, like Sam Robertson, Kloffenstein, they're on the 40-man roster, but the Cardinals have shown no inclination to be willing to try them out. Others, like Zach Thompson and Liberatore, they've attempted it already. So your Palante is like, guy number 5 or 6 that we really thought, maybe 7 or 8, that we really thought would have been given this type of opportunity because he was destined to begin the year in the bullpen and did so, but struggled so much that necessitated his send down. But they basically dared that group of AAA starters to be ready a year after they all famously either regressed or just did not progress as expected. And that's a bold strategy. Because really, you remember back to January of 2023, John Mozeliak in winter warm-up mode saying, yeah, guys like Graceffo and McGreevy are going to be able to help us this year. He mentions them by name, and then those guys stall out, and they've continued to kind of stall out this year. McGreevy has really struggled. I would bring Graceffo up. Like if Palante has one more troublesome start and Matz is not immediately ready to be back, and even I don't know how excited you'll be about Matz when he does come back, Graceffo would be probably the guy because it's time to start cycling those guys through. Why do you have them in AAA if you're not willing to use them and there is a big need at the major league level? Like that's going to have to be the question that's asked. If Palante can't turn it around, he gets a little bit longer of a leash in my opinion, but I'm not sure if you have another outing like this one. I'm okay with starting to cycle through some of those AAA guys and seeing which one wants to come out and be a competitor and have it stick. Because as much as I do like Palante and I think it can work, but when he's continuing to just give away freebies, 3 walks, hit batter and a wild pitch that cost him a couple of runs, it's going to be really difficult to consistently do those things and have the level of success that he wants to have and that the Cardinals want him to have. So those are sort of my thoughts across the board. Let me know anything I may have missed, anything that I need to dig into a little bit more. I mentioned Mason Wynn's big day, obviously, but specifically the home run into the Crawford boxes is very cool, very fun for the Houston area native. Mason Wynn, move him up in the lineup. That would be my recommendation. That, though, is going to do it for this edition of the show. I appreciate you guys, as always, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on Be Safe Daily. Peace.